Good afternoon. Welcome to the chapel. The bell is tolling 1 o'clock. So it's time for Padre's Ponderings again.
Hello, hello, hello. Hand sanitized.
Yep. You got your mask and your shirt.
Mask ready.
That's his new hiding place.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Is where we are, you know, is where we are. I remember as a child, I had a little silver tone radio. A little, I think it was black, about that big. Sat right by the bed in the bedroom when we were living with my grandmother. Daddy was at war, in the Korean War overseas. And on Saturday nights, we'd listen to the Lone Ranger. Hi-O Silver.
Away.
Who was that masked man? And I've got my mask here.
You're the
got
Lone
got no
Ranger.
silver bullets. Yeah, we left the silver bullets behind.
Well, that's a good memory.
Did you ever know the story of the masked man about the Lone Ranger?
I can't say that I watched it. It's
Oh, did
Tonto
you know the story
and the
about
Lone
it?
Ranger.
Yeah.
There was a remake of it a couple of years ago. I didn't watch that either. So sorry, I can't contribute to this conversation.
Anyway, he was a Texas Ranger. He was a Texas Ranger.
Like Chuck Norris.
I don't know that. This is in the Old West. He's a Texas Ranger. He's with a group of Rangers. They get ambushed by outlaws, and all of them are killed. He is left for dead. He is discovered by an Indian who turns out to be Tonto. And he does not want the bandits who killed him to know that he is alive. And so he starts wearing this mask. After Tonto nurses him back to health, he wears this mask. But instead of taking his revenge on killing the outlaws, he decides that he instead will commit his life to doing good for other people. But he doesn't want people to know who he is.
So that's
So
why
when he leaves, instead of a calling card, he leaves a silver bullet. And invariably, they ride off at the end of the show. They ride off, and he's lifted up, you know, and Hi-O Silver and away. And somebody asks, "Who was that masked man?" You know. And nobody knows
But
who the
his mask was over his eyes.
Yeah.
Right, and we've got it
covered
now.
his identity.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a whole different kind of mask, isn't it?
This is. Juan's watching.
It's a
Juan,
good story
I bet you
for
watched,
the wrong time.
Yeah.
But
I bet Juan watched The Lone Ranger.
maybe in Spanish in Puerto Rico, somewhere down there. I don't know if the Lone Ranger was down there or not. But they were, every culture, I think, has its equivalent of the Lone Ranger. Someone who does good and doesn't want any credit for it. That's a rare thing.
That's a message.
That's a message.
Say that again.
Someone who does good and doesn't want any credit for it, you know. I was thinking the other day, I was flipping through the hymn book looking for some hymns, and one of the things that amazes me is that some of the greatest hymns were written by people who didn't want any credit for it.
Mm-hmm. Anonymous.
And they just didn't put their names in there, you know, and they're great hymns, great hymns. Our cookbook, parish cookbook, does not have the names of the people who gave the recipes in it.
I never noticed that. That's like one of the only cookbooks I still have left because you can get so much online.
Yeah.
But I know. But that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great
I never
cookbook.
noticed that.
It doesn't have any names. It's about God's glory. So, full of stories today.
Full of stories today.
Well,
last week, the peppermint story. That was something.
Yeah. You know, there are lots the stories that really work are the true stories.
Mm-hmm. And they hit you right here.
Did you ever know your Uncle Joe, great Uncle Joe it would be, Mama's uncle?
Yes, he was postmaster in Barnwell.
He was a rural mail carrier. He wasn't a post carrier. He wasn't a postman. He wasn't the postmaster.
He rode around on a bicycle, didn't he?
He was a mailman at one time. Then later on, his route was so big, he used an old green Ford Pinto or something like that, I think it was. He was one of the most unusual characters.
He was. He could bake a cake now.
He was a great cook. I told the vestry about this, and they said, you know, you ought to use that story in a sermon. So I probably will. So don't y'all pay attention to this. Anyway, I'll tell this to Rebecca.
Brain dumping.
He was a special guy, a unique fella. Good daddy, good husband, no fake about him at all. Loved people, but the big thing is everybody loved him. And when I preached his funeral at Terza there in Dalzell, I spoke about why I thought everybody loved him. That's because he only had one eye. And so he only could see half of what people saw. And I think early on in his life as an adult, he came to that realization and he made a decision. If I can only see half of what there is to see, what am I going to see? What do I choose to see? And he chose to see things in a way that other people didn't. He only saw the good in people.
Wow.
He didn't see race, and he was raised in the segregated. Race was not important. He saw people the way he believed God saw him. And God saw him not as who he was, but as who he could be. And that's how Joe looked at people. And when we did that funeral there at Terza, a lot of people from Barnwell came there because he loved them. And they, one of them told me afterwards, said, but you know, Joe's eyesight, he only had the one eye. I think he lost it to disease when he was younger. But as he got older, his eyesight got worse and worse and worse. And he would bake cakes and take them to people on the route. If anybody was sick, he knew about it. He would watch out for them. He was just a tender, gentle fella. And one of the people told me that they loved him and they loved him and they loved him. And toward the end of his career as a mail carrier, said he didn't deliver the mail, he scattered the mail. Because he couldn't read well. He scattered the mail. And he said, we never told him. We would just work it all out ourselves like that because we loved him. See? We loved him. And we loved him because he loved us. See, that love smooths over a lot of things. Smooths over a lot of things. And one of our problems these days is that we don't see other people the way God sees us. And God sees all of our faults and everything, sees it all, but he chooses to love us anyway, which is wonderful, called grace. But we don't do that way. Our love tends to be conditional, and if somebody's different than us, we right away put them in the dustbin of life and don't give them a chance. And we do that regardless of whatever reason that makes them different from us in our own eyes. A lot of sadness in that. In fact, that's the root of most of the sadness we're involved with today.
It's true.
But that too is another story.
We don't give as much grace as we receive.
No, we sure don't. Quick to dismiss, slow to embrace.
So that's a lesson for all of us for today.
I'm loaded with lessons.
You are loaded with lessons.
Loaded with lessons.
Loaded with nuggets. Wisdom.
Nuggets. I got your pen and paper, friends.
Take out your pen and paper. All right. So.
But don't tell anybody about that story because I'm probably going to use that in a sermon
You
sometime.
should.
Yeah.
I think that, and that's so precious. They loved him so much that they smoothed it out amongst themselves. Yeah. All right, so this weekend we have a couple of changes that we need to talk about.
Such as?
Such as we were scheduled on the tentative schedule that you rolled out. Gosh, how long ago has that been?
Been a while now.
I have no concept of time these days. The tentative schedule to open Grace Time was this Saturday. However, we're going to hold off.
We're going to hold off.
And it's not because we don't love the Grace Time service, or it's not because we don't love the people that attend the Grace Time service. But why are we holding off?
Two big reasons, I think. The first is this whole situation that causes us to wear a mask now. This thing just seems to be, spiking is the word, it seems to be getting out of hand. Whether it is or not depends on who you're talking to. The numbers, the cases, the testing positive, that's surely going up. Then upon who you talk to, the number of people hospitalized is going down. There's all kinds of discrepancies in the actuality of what's going on there. The truth is so varied and information is conflicted. But clearly, people are more apprehensive now at the governmental levels and at the local level than they were before. Consequently, we're wearing the masks and so forth. And it just, for us to move blindly ahead, even though I'm in to put my head down and go, we announced a schedule to move forward with. It's been 6 weeks ago now. And that was based upon the conditions at the time. But I think the conditions now are different than they were then. And we're just being stubborn and butt-headed to not acknowledge that. And then secondly, I've seen, as we've watched, we've got the 2 services on the historic campus. The 8 and 10 o'clock service are open now. The 9 o'clock here at the chapel, the 10:30 at Cross Point. And we have the capacity now to handle the number of people, with some extras even, the number of people who are signing up to come. So there's not a drive and need to add another service because we've got people waiting in line to come to the other services. So we don't have the urgency of needing to have spaces for people for in-person worship. And our statistics clearly tell us that worlds of people are doing online worship with us. So we don't need the space for in-person worship. And neither do we need to put people in harm's way, but it's blowing ahead as if there's nothing different out there than there was 6 weeks ago. Now, what the difference is, how long it's going to be, who knows, who knows. But when things level out again, and the big thing is when people feel comfortable about coming out of their homes and coming into a public worship service, even though you're wearing masks and all that, some people don't feel comfortable with it yet. When they feel comfortable with that, we'll have the services there for them. But until then, there's no need to put people in harm's way, and there's no need just to push forward with a plan just because you said you were going to have a plan. Wisdom is knowing when to say no, more so than when to say yes. The hardest thing to do for people is to love somebody enough to say no. Anybody can say yes, but that's not a sign of loving your children or grandchildren or anything else. It's to love them enough to say no. Sometimes we don't love ourselves enough to say no to ourselves, and we catch a lot of grief for that. But that's another story too. Does that explain it enough?
I think that's a great explanation. So as we see the need of people desiring to come back, and
as these numbers start to stabilize or go down,
yeah,
and we fill up, sure. We've got extra spaces at each of the services now. As we run out of spaces, then we'll add some more spaces, and that'll have to come by adding a service. And the first one we'll add back will be the grace time, and then the next one after that will be the 9 o'clock service at Cross Point. But right now, we're still planning to go ahead the end of July with adding a service, but it'll be one that Juan will be doing.
I know. Oh, Juan, I hope you're watching.
For our Latino and Hispanic friends. And I might be there for that first one and do a little habla español with them and bring my marachas. Maracas. My maracas. Who knows? I might be there. You never know what the Spirit will do with that. But anyway, we're going to move ahead with that because we don't have an alternative.
July 20th.
It's the last Sunday in July.
Last Sunday in July.
Last Sunday in July. Because we don't have an option for Hispanic and Latino folks. So we need to get that. We need to get that going. Juan's doing a great job working with that. It'll be on the historic campus, 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
1 o'clock in the afternoon, historic campus. That's exciting. So we are adding a service at the end of July.
But we don't have any capacity now for folks who are not bilingual.
Right. So. Well, very good. Can I put in a quick plug?
A plug?
A plug for a need. If you are regularly attending, which some of you are signing up every week to attend services, which is fantastic. We love that. If you're currently not volunteering, because a lot of people aren't coming back, that means that a lot of our volunteers aren't coming back. So if you're interested in helping as an usher at the chapel or at the historic campus and Cross Point, we don't need a lot of other areas. We're not doing chalice bearers and things like that right now because communion is much simpler with just the bread. But we do need ushers and greeters and people to help at registration table and things like that. So if you're willing to volunteer a little bit of your time one Sunday, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah. How about the technician people?
Oh, we always are looking for, look at Jason's giving a thumbs up. We're always looking for people to join the technology and production team. Yes, because we've expanded it so much in the past 16 weeks, I guess it is.
Yeah.
We've been doing this. So we need people at Cross Point, Historic Campus, and the chapel.
That's
so
right.
if you're interested in learning a new skill, and you have a teachable spirit, Jason's a great teacher and great to work with. So.
But he's subject to mess up. That's why we need to have some more volunteers along there to kind of stand in the gap sometime when he stumbles, you know. So.
Well, more so, we can't multiply him, so we need to multiply other bodies. So,
you know, I thought about growing a beard one time, but.
You thought about growing a beard?
Yeah.
No, you did not.
It was a quick thought.
That was a fleeting moment.
Right, just right across the top of my head there. That isn't me.
No.
That isn't me.
No. Oh, my goodness. Oh, one is... Yes, thank you, Juan. July 26th. The one is rapidly.
July 26th, that's
rapidly.
great.
Yes, we've got, there are spaces. My computer's updating right now, so I couldn't bring it to check. But we do have spaces available at all services for next weekend. So registration started this morning. If you are a member of the church and you have a member login, that's one way that you can sign up without having to go to the website. But if you're not even sure what that means, just go to the website and sign up there. Good afternoon, Sandy. Peg Marino's watching from Maryland. Yes, we've got lots of people. Sue Shook is watching.
And I'll be preaching this weekend here in the chapel and at Cross Point.
And it's the same service or same sermon you did last week at
the Historic Campus.
It's 3 P's. Promise.
Purpose.
Promise. Potential. Purpose, promise, potential.
Yes.
And Juan is preaching at Historic Campus.
My Bride, I think, is
yes,
the name of his. My Bride.
My Bride.
From the Song of Solomon, 4th chapter, I believe, is what he's working on there.
Yeah.
So it'll be good. And we got Kevin teaching Wednesday night.
Yes, that's our new addition to the schedule. Judges. This week is
He's working
Gideon.
out. He's doing. No, this week is. This is first time.
I think it's Gideon.
Gideon. Okay, great.
And that won't be an in-person teaching, so watch on Facebook or the website.
7 o'clock tomorrow
Wednesday.
night. Mm-hmm. Wednesday night, yeah.
Yeah, it's already.
Gideon, Jephthah, and Samson will be the judges he's doing, and he's doing Ruth.
Because she lived in the time of the judges. Isn't that the first line of Ruth? Or the last line of?
And that's the book
Judges.
right after Judges is the story of Ruth. Great.
So what else you got going on? You're working on another sermon, don't you?
Yeah. I'm always working on a sermon. I try to keep a couple of them going at a time. I'm working on one about Abraham, and the title of it's going to be, Are You a Friend to God? And what I'm trying to do is figure out, Abraham was called God's friend. He was the only person in Scripture that's called that. And going back through the story of Abraham, why was he God's friend? And if we can figure out why he was God's friend, then maybe we can have a kind of a checklist to ask ourselves, are we God's friend? How we measured up to the things that Abraham did? How do we stack up with that? So I'm working on that. I think that'll be the next one I'll do. Are you a friend of God?
So I'm guessing.
And then I'm going to do one after that about Samson. Samson's legacy. And y'all, now Kevin's going to be teaching on Samson a month or so before I preach on that. And what you might do, if you really want some excitement, go on one of the channels out there,
Streaming, on like Netflix.
Yeah, like Netflix. See if you can get this movie, Samson and Delilah. Victor Mature and Susan Hayward are the stars of that
Old
thing.
school movie.
Old school.
But those were really good. So
Samson
that's
and
prepping
Delilah.
for your sermon.
And you could look at that ahead of my sermon. Yeah. So I think that'll be a good sermon too. I'm working on that one. And then I'm looking down the road to about the next one after that I'm thinking about is, a lot of times in the morning I'll come and I'll sit on those steps right out in front of the chapel out here, and I'd look out there at the cars going by. And when I was out there about last month, I think it was. Cars were going by, and for a long time there hadn't been a lot of cars, and now they're starting to build up some, And I was asking myself, now, why would somebody want to be a Christian? Why would those folks who are scooting up and down that road, why would they turn in here and come to a worship service? How does that work? Why would you want to be a Christian? It's a good question. So I'm thinking that's in the back of my mind for the next one after that, down there somewhere. Why would you be a Christian? So I'd try to stay out there 2 or 3 out, and then in my reading and listening and all that kind of stuff, you pick up examples and little illustrations and stuff like that you can put in there.
So when you're doing the Abraham one, are we going to be singing I'm a Friend of God?
We might. Can we get Jason to learn that one? That's on the radio now. You ought to be able to get that.
That's actually an older one.
What a Friend We Have in Jesus. That's a big one.
Oh, that's a good one.
There's a big one there now. Yeah.
So I'm going to be singing these all afternoon.
Good songs.
Yes.
And then there's one out now too that I like a lot that I'm thinking about is, and I'm thinking about trying to use it in the Abraham one, Samson one. Samson falls to the wayside. He's dedicated to be a holy child and set apart and all that. He falls to the wayside, and we all do that. But it happens slowly, and there's a new song out. I want to say it's Casting Crowns or Third. It's one of those groups. It's big, and it's called Slow Fade.
That's an old one. That's Casting Crowns, I think. Yes, that's a
Slow
fantastic
Fade.
song.
See, if I get Jason to learn that, we might do that during that.
Or Jordan.
When I do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fantastic song.
Slow
Because
fade.
it is. It's a slow fade. And it was for
Slow
him
fade
too.
from white to black into
Yeah.
that gray kind of area.
Yeah.
And that's where most of us are, is in the grays. Some's in the blacks, few in the white, most in the gray. But that's another story.
And how quickly it happens. Yeah, there's a line in there, be careful little eyes what you see. Be careful little ears what you hear.
That's it.
Because it can happen pretty quickly if we're not
Did you ever know
watching.
Roseanne Dennis?
Miss,
Did you ever know Rose Dennis?
I know who she
teacher?
is.
Taught at
But
Thomas
she
Sumter and
was-
taught at Bethel?
She didn't teach once I was in school.
I got a call. I'm going to return this a little bit. Came on the voicemail with Roseanne crying, and her mama died this morning.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how old Rose would have been, but she was such a beautiful lady.
Would she have been a contemporary of Gigi, your mother?
No, she was younger than Mama. Yeah, there are not many people old as Mama.
She's still got
But
some
no,
spunk, though.
she was quite the lady, and Roseanne is quite the lady too.
Yeah, we went and saw your mother, my grandmother, on Friday. She has still got it. Had us
99.
laughing. 99. Tiny, tiny, tiny right now, but sharp as
She
a
doesn't even weigh her age.
No, she doesn't.
Doesn't weigh her age.
No.
20 years ago, she'd been proud of that, but and now she doesn't think about it.
No. All right, anything more this weekend that we need to know about? That was kind of a big one about the change in schedule.
That is a big one. About the food bank.
Oh, yes, that's what I was going to.
The food bank. Yeah. We're
Well,
always in need of
Cheryl and
stuff in
Rod
there.
sent a message, and here are the needs for this week. We served, I think, 147 families yesterday. Glory to God. The supplies and donations are starting to kind of slow down, so please make that a priority and a way when other ministries can't operate right now for various reasons and obvious reasons. The food bank has not stopped. We haven't taken a week off of that this
Nope.
entire time.
Nope.
And praise the Lord, we've had enough things. Each family was given 2 bags of food, bread, produce, and meat. Also, either a half gallon or a gallon of milk. And this week, the needs are canned fruits, canned vegetables, baked beans, ravioli, canned tuna, jelly, pasta, cereal, paper goods, and diapers of any size. So basically, everything is needed for this week. So,
and I think that's an important thing for y'all to keep in mind too, is getting the donations, bringing the food and stuff in, because now we got some people going back to work who did have time to bring donations, and now they're preoccupied with endeavors themselves. And so those of you who have time, kind of knuckle down a little bit and get in there with those donations. Saturday morning from 9 until 11, and Monday morning from 9 until 12.
But you can also bring in, if you come to a service.
That's a good point.
You can bring it as you come to the service, and we'll take care of getting it to the food bank on Monday. Any campus. If you come to the chapel and you just bring your bags and put them at the in the narthex, we'll take care of them. I think there's a basket at Historic Campus in the narthex. At Cross Schools, we've got wagons out. Please,
great.
However you can bring it, it's fine. If you want to drop it off Saturday, Sunday at service, or Monday. So we've got three different times. I know several people are still collecting for their neighborhood. Their home is a drop-off point, and they fill the trunk. I know that Susan Ball and Linda Laird have been every week. They fill the entire trunk of their car and bring it. So thank you for ministering to the community in that way. So.
Thinking about other people. That's just so important. It's easy to be in this time of self-isolation. You isolate away from people, and you start thinking about yourself. And you get down the dumps pretty quick that way. You want to get out of the dumps, do something for somebody else. See, that's why Jesus says more blessed to give than to receive. You get a double blessing. You give it, and you see the smiles on the faces and the joy of doing it, and you get a blessing coming back. You bless and are blessed. A double blessing.
Thank you to those people that are volunteering their time on Monday, Saturday, and Monday also for that huge ministry. So, and as you were saying that, I know that there are, as people are pulling back again with listening to the news and kind of their own fears about going out, if you are struggling, I think it's really important. People do not like to ask for help, but sometimes you need to. If you need to talk to somebody, I was talking to a precious sister in Christ the other day, and she called and she said, I just needed somebody to talk to. If you need somebody to talk to, please contact us. If you're in need of pastoral care, or if you find if you find yourself in a place of kind of depression in this isolation, that is normal, because we're not meant to live in isolation at all. Please reach out, send an email to info@thechurchofthecross.net, and then I'll send it out to wherever, whatever ministry needs to be involved.
That's right, and we have 14 ministries working with all that. So get involved. Don't suffer in silence. Let people know. Another thing, if you're worshiping at home on an internet or a live stream service on Sunday morning, either the 9 o'clock service from the chapel or the 10:30 service from Grace Point or Cross Point, both those are streamed now. Invite somebody else to do that too. And you give on the webpage too.
You can, and it's very easy. We've heard a lot of people say, I didn't realize it was so easy. It is. And if you need prayer.
Thank you to all of you who are giving online too. That's quite a blessing. Thank you for the ones who are sending cards and letters too.
Yeah. So we're here for you. I think on the website for the beginning of this, it said God's not on vacation and neither are we. That's true. We're all working and we're here for you. If you need prayer, give us a call. So,
Yep.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we do our line?
I think I've said enough today.
You had some good nuggets of wisdom.
What can I say?
You're full of
When you're hot, you know. When you're not, you're not.
That's true too. Yeah. All right. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thanks be to God. In all that we do here, know that God loves you, and I love you too. Peace and blessings to you.
Have a blessed day. We'll see you Sunday or next Tuesday.
Right. Or both.
Or in between.